Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of Why Should I Trust You? So you may have seen a lot of headlines out there about the MAHA movement. People saying things like, are the wheels coming off? Is this where the MAGA and MAHA alliance goes Splitsville? That's not only a question coming from its critics. This time, many MAHA supporters are asking the same thing. That's because just days ago, President Trump signed an executive order invoking the Defense Production Act to safeguard U.S. supplies of glyphosate, the most widely used herbicide in American agriculture, calling it critical to our farmers, our food security, and yes, even our national defense. Yes, glyphosate, the same herbicide that MAHA and its leader, Robert F. Kennedy, have so passionately fought to get rid of. And then, in another blow to MAHA, the EPA announced it was rolling back limits on mercury for coal-burning power plants. Glyphosate, mercury. For decades, they've been described as poisoning the people by RFK Jr., who, in a stunning move, came out in support of the president's executive order. Definitely many inside the MAHA movement are furious, but is MAHA really collapsing? Or is this just growing pains as they work within this administration? We have a star-studded MAHA lineup today. Zen Honeycutt, Kelly Ryerson, and Jenna McCarthy, all popular voices within MAHA with a lot to say on this topic. Let's get started. Hey, welcome back, everyone. Boy, has this been an extraordinary couple of days. I think it's fair to say, kind of gauging the reaction out there among MAHA, among folks not in MAHA, among really just anybody out there, most especially those focused on the environmental toxins and that space right now. Things are really kind of fired up. This conversation has definitely been dominating those circles. We have a banging lineup today. We have Zen Honeycutt, the powerhouse MAHA activist so passionately focused on environmental toxins. We've got Kelly Ryerson, aka the glyphosate girl on social media, also a MAHA leader on environmental issues, and Jenna McCarthy, not to be confused with Jenny McCarthy. This is Jenna McCarthy, author of the popular Substack Jenna Side, also followed by many in the MAHA movement. All of them are joining us in a moment. And by us, it's just Tom and me today. Hi, Tom. How's it going?
Hey, it's going well.
We popped this episode up based on all that's going down right now. Mark and Maggie, we promise, are going to be back on the next one. And speaking of the next one, just one small note of housekeeping. If all goes as planned, our next episode to drop on Thursday, we are going to be dropping it a little bit later that day. It's not going to be early that morning, but it will be there. Just from some scheduling reasons, we're going to be dropping it a little bit later on Thursday afternoon. So, Tom, before we bring in Zen and Jenna and Kelly, help us get up to speed on all this news around glyphosate and the environment right now.
Yeah, lots been going on. So let's go through what's gone down recently that runs counter to stated goals of MAHA, core principles of MAHA. The first thing to mention is the EPA repealed the endangerment finding. And you remember that was a huge news story, front pages. And that's the legal foundation, the underpinning for how America has been regulating greenhouse gas pollution from cars and power plants. So that was repealed. That'll go to the courts, but it was a big move by this EPA to deregulate. And just on Friday, the EPA rolled back a Biden-era mercury limit for coal plants, reverting back to a looser 2012 standard that had a big whopping loophole in it back in 2012 that the most mercury polluting types of plants could pollute through. It also reapproved the controversial herbicide dicamba, which is something a lot of MAHA supporters were very upset about. But the big one, as we mentioned, is glyphosate. So last Wednesday, President Trump signed an executive order invoking the Defense Production Act, declaring that glyphosate-based herbicides are critical to national defense. And it states in some that it's the most widely used crop protection tool in the U.S., it's the cornerstone of our agricultural productivity. It helps, keep high yields and low costs while ensuring that we have an affordable food option, and basically makes the point that there's not enough glyphosate being made in America, and that we might move into an era where we could be in trouble and need glyphosate and not have what we need. And therefore, the executive order gives the agriculture secretary the power to work with other manufacturers to boost its production. That's sort of the basics of what this order said. One piece about this order, too, that's caught a lot of people's attention has to do with protection from liability. And the order basically says if this comes to pass and companies are asked to prioritize and boost their production of it, they will be protected, mostly for disrupting other parts of their business that could disrupt the people that rely on them who might sue. It doesn't offer a protection for health reasons regarding the product of glyphosate. That takes us to sort of glyphosate. What is it? What is this kind of conversation about the safety? So as we said, it's a widely used herbicide, kills weeds, helps farmers, and its safety is contested. The EPA says that it's, quote, not likely to be carcinogenic to humans, while the WHO's Cancer Research Agency disagrees and classifies it as, quote, probably carcinogenic. So that divergence has fueled decades of litigation against its makers and tens of thousands of lawsuits. And while this debate plays out, we got that huge news in December that a scientific journal retracted a decades-old study that had long been cited in arguments that glyphosate does not pose risk to humans and their health when used as directed. And it was retracted not because there was some new science, but rather evidence emerged of corporate involvement in the research.
Right. And my understanding is that this was like Monsanto researchers ghostwriting a study and then sort of claiming that this was an independent study. And this journal, I think at the time it was considered like the biggest study into glyphosate. So it was a big deal when this retraction happened. It was kind of nuts.
Yeah, it sure was. And, as we said, glyphosate is strongly opposed by MAHA, and it has historically been strongly opposed by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's criticized glyphosate throughout his career and also was involved in litigation against its manufacturer. And just as recently as 2024, he posted that glyphosate was one of the likely culprits in America's chronic disease epidemic. So one more note about the timing of the executive order. The day before the order was signed, Bayer, which is the sole producer of glyphosate, remember Bayer bought Monsanto, Bayer announced that it had come to a proposed multi-billion-dollar settlement to resolve tens of thousands of pending lawsuits against it over its product. And that settlement still awaits court approval, and it's not guaranteed to be approved, but that's out there. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court is getting ready to hear a major glyphosate case involving Bayer in April, in which Bayer is seeking relief from future claims. And the administration has come down sort of on Bayer's side in front of the court on that matter. And Bayer is arguing that without a path to resolving its legal exposure over this, it may be unable to keep selling glyphosate in the U.S. at all. And then there's money. You'll probably be seeing this on your social media feeds, but about last year, multiple news agencies were reporting that Bayer had donated $1 million to the Trump inauguration, as did other major corporations. But those pieces are now being recycled now as this news of this executive order continues to reverberate.
That's right. And, all of this in the context of increasing pressure on farmers in this country, which is another piece of this story. Yes. But when we come back, I am so excited about this conversation, Tom. We will have Zen Honeycutt, Kelly Ryerson, and Jenna McCarthy to talk about all of this. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, and a big Why Should I Trust You welcome to three friends of the show. First, returning to the show, we have Zen Honeycutt. Zen is the founder and executive director of Moms Across America and a MAHA leader on environmental issues. Hi, Zen.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks, Brenda.
Next, we are thrilled to have Kelly Ryerson back on the show. Kelly goes by Glyphosate Girl online, and she is also a leading MAHA voice on this issue and environmental issues more broadly. Welcome back, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be back.
And next we have Jenna McCarthy, not Jenny McCarthy for those listening, Jenna McCarthy. She is the author of Jenna's Side, a super popular Substack where she has recently written about this topic. And also she has co-authored a book with Pierre Corey on the war on ivermectin. Welcome to the show, Jenna.
Hi, Brenda. I'm so happy to be here.
Really glad to have all three of you on. Okay, so Zen, let's go to you first. Walk me through the mind of Zen Honeycutt when Trump's executive order came out about glyphosate. Like, what was your first reaction?
I was floored. I was disgusted and outraged. It was very, very disturbing. And I knew that this was a pivotal moment in our history, in our country, because the president had named a pesticide a national security asset. This has never happened before. And there had to be a huge reason, a motivating reason for it that was not necessarily in the executive order. Because what was in the executive order, frankly, could have been a simple government contract. Quiet, on the down low, not a public thing, right? There are government contracts that are made every day with jet plane companies and truck companies and weapon companies. And they're government contracts. They're not executive orders. There was a reason why this was an executive order. And after, a couple days of thought, I'm like, I think that this is because of the Supreme Court case that's coming out in April. This is Monsanto, Bayer versus Durnell. I think that this president is sending a signal to the Supreme Court that he wants to protect glyphosate or our representatives, because the Farm Bill markup was supposed to be this week. And the executive order came out, just days before the Farm Bill markup. So I'm extremely concerned about the chemical corporations coercing our president into making an executive order to protect their, pesticide company profits. It's outrageous. It's just, to me, it's another example of corporate corruption within our government, and we're sick and tired of it.
Kelly, let me bring you in. You've been quoted widely in the press, and this one particular quote that you said has kind of ricocheted around, which is that you think the bottom has just fallen out of MAHA. Tell us what you meant when you said that.
For people like me and Zen, like for us, glyphosate has been a really big issue for a long time. And we've both been working really hard on public awareness of this. I don't think we knew the extent to which the public was aware of glyphosate until this EO hit, and just realized how deeply this was resonating to such a point that I believe that a lot of MAHA voters straight up came over because Kennedy was one of the lawyers suing Monsanto and was widely saying that he thinks glyphosate's at the base of the chronic disease epidemic. So if that was your reason, as you know, there are many reasons why you come in as a MAHA voter, tons of reasons. But if your reason was pesticides and glyphosate, which I think for a lot of people it was, this was an absolute bomb thrown on that contingent of MAHA, and really an enormous disconnect between what MAHA has been supporting and what clearly the executive or the administration is pursuing. And it's important to note too that just actually today, deep investigation was dropped, and it was done by Stacy over at US Right to Know. She was able to trace exactly the monetary ties between Bayer and Pam Bondi and Susie Wiles and they all worked for a lobbying organization called Ballard that Bayer pays. Bayer is their top client. And this has been an ongoing relationship to be sure that pesticides are still widely available, that immunity shields can pass. So now we have this insight, which frankly I would have suspected because of all of this pro-pesticide stuff that's been coming out of the EPA and out of the White House, that we really have Bayer inside of the White House now. And that is just really, really hard to grapple with, that coexisting with the promises of MAHA. So what happens now, I don't know. But certainly back to your original question, on Twitter, it looked to me at that moment that the bottom fell out of MAHA. However, none of us are going anywhere. Like Zen and I aren't going anywhere. We're just growing. We're going to get bigger, whether it's MAHA or something else. We're just going to keep on collecting like a magnet of people that are going to prioritize human health over corporate profits. So maybe MAHA proper, as it stands as a Trump organization, might be faltering right now, but the people are still here.
Jenna, you wrote an excellent Substack on this, and in the piece, you sort of evolve from your initial reaction to sort of where you end up and where you land and the way you look at this. But just going back to Brenda's original question, what was your first reaction when you saw the news of this?
Horror, shock and horror. Are you kidding me? Why are we not on the same page? What was something I said in my Substack is there's no plausible deniability here, right? Like nobody can ever say Trump was just being advised by, the wrong people. He was listening to the wrong people. He's got Bobby Kennedy in his ear. Bobby Kennedy has sued Monsanto. Like we all know all these things. And literally the first thing I did was run to X to go, what did Bobby say? What was his response? Because I thought as a sane MAHA person, he would be, I can't quite get behind, even if he had to couch it. And it was, defense is critical, all the things he said. And like, Zen and Kelly, I was like, that's a kick in the gut. How could this even be happening? And then, as I explore, so, my background is, well, two things. I'm a middle child and I'm a researcher. So I like to keep the peace, but I like to play devil's advocate. What could be the argument for this? How could Kennedy actually have said this is a great thing? And so I uncovered a couple of things. Number one, the liability, which is the worst part of it, right? Like, let me back up. We use glyphosate in this country. We do. We shouldn't. It's an effed up part of the system, but we're kind of dependent on it right now. So it's not like you can just pull that rug out, right? First of all, we don't want to rely on China. We don't want, we would like our product to be coming from this country. It's safer. We can control it. We can regulate it, et cetera. So the way I kind of looked at it was, in my marriage, my husband and I joke, my husband's a contractor. He builds it, I make it pretty. He fixes it, I zhuzh it, I throw on the pillows. Like Trump's job right now is to keep the entire country from falling apart. Whether I'm not a politician, I can't tell you if there are very real security threats coming from China and if our whole food supply is hovering on the brink. But what I know is if you believe that to be true, Trump's just got to keep the food flowing, and then Bobby's going to come in and make it prettier. You can't do both at the same time. The bottoms falling out of MAGA, MAHA, 100% they want us to think that, right? Like, oh, there's no point even, supporting this movement anymore. There's no point supporting Bobby. They would love it if we all just said, bye, MAHA, you're worthless. Like, I feel like you said, Kelly, like, I'm not going anywhere. And yes, I'm going to continue to fight for the things that I think are important. But I'm not going to let them spin the narrative in this thing is done. Look at these people, they can't even get along. No, we're all passionate. We all want the same thing. We all want healthy food. We want a good environment for our kids. So let's figure out how we can get there. And we probably can't get there overnight.
Zen, what do you make of that? I think Jenna's making some good points here, that there's a reality here, and maybe this is MAHA kind of having a reality bites moment, like MAHA's sort of facing the reality that you can't turn the food system upside down overnight. We've got to take it slow. Bobby's doing what he can do. He's working within a system. Is that where you are now, that you've had several days to sit with this, or just tell us where you are in this kind of evolution of kind of processing this?
Yeah. So I have a concern that the bridge of trust that MAHA built between the government and the grassroots, the American people, is damaged. I don't think it's gone, but there's definitely massive collateral damage that has happened to that bridge of trust that MAHA created between the government and the people. I don't know about you, Kelly, but I mean, I've been working on this for 13 years, and I have gotten meetings with the EPA over those years, right? But there has been a wall up for a very long time. And MAHA created a bridge between the government and the people where we were being listened to. We were being heard, and, actions were taken, like the Operation Stork Speed, and, many other types of, food dyes. All types of things have happened with this administration that have never happened before. And so my concern is that trust would be broken and that we wouldn't be as effective. That is concerning. And of course, that's what the opposition wants. So I agree. We're not going anywhere. People have said, that MAHA has collapsed, MAHA is divided. I would assert you cannot collapse or divide MAHA, because you cannot divide or collapse the commitment that a mother, especially, or a parent has to the health and safety of their child. So we're not going anywhere. We are unstoppable. The mothers are the tidal wave which created MAHA. MAHA was just a name that was added onto this movement by Kennedy and Trump, and then brought into the administration, which we are extremely grateful for. But any mom that I talk to today, she's not going to stop doing whatever it takes to have her child be healthy and then tell everyone else about it. So I just wanted to address that. I also want to address the fact that people keep saying that we are dependent on glyphosate. I would say that inside the model of GMO monocrop farming, there is a heavy utilization of glyphosate, and it is definitely a part of that farming. However, farming is a choice. Farming practices are a choice. Cancer is not a choice. Autism, sterility, infertility, not a choice. So at this point in the game, we would expect that this administration that's committed to making America healthy again would be choosing to support the farmers to make a different choice. And that is regenerative organic farming. That's something that Kelly's been working on for a long time. I'm sure she has a lot to say about it. And that's where we need to go right now, is to be putting funds and resources into regenerative organic farming.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you guys about some of the alternatives to get us less dependent on these herbicides that are being discussed. But before we do that, I want to talk about Bobby Kennedy for a second and his kind of position right now and how you all are absorbing it. So Kelly, I don't need to tell you guys that glyphosate and mercury are two words in the sort of Kennedy vocabulary that have been rallying cries to his supporters. And you have the EPA now making it easier for coal plants to spew out toxic levels of mercury, and a executive order that is going to make it easier to produce glyphosate. So then you have Bobby Kennedy coming out with this statement, and I'm sure you guys have all seen it. It's quite long. It starts off with, "I will always tell the American people the truth." And then he says, "I support President Trump's executive order." Of course, he talks about, saying that pesticides and herbicides are toxic by design. But really, it sounds like he is defending President Trump's position here. What went through your mind when you saw that statement? What do you think he was trying to communicate?
I don't think that Bobby has any kind of choice in the matter. He got into environmentalism after actually meeting Rachel Carson as a boy. And he talks about this story a lot. This launched him into a whole world of environmentalism, becoming the lawyer that he is, specifically calling out pollinator collapse, all of these things that are tightly connected with these environmental toxins. So that's something that I know because I've followed his career for some time. Whether or not other people know, I don't know. I would hope so, because I think that when he communicates, and particularly when he was an independent candidate, he is very, very real, and you can tell he's not making this up. This is what he actually believes. He's not playing for anyone but human health. And so I think that he is certainly in this incredibly challenging place where he has to appease his boss. And Bobby Kennedy is not president. If he was, we would have a very different story right now. If he was president, which a lot of us wanted, this would not have happened. But he is very carefully towing the line. And I actually am surprised that he even was able to say that pesticides are a problem, because that pissed off so many farmers, Farm Bureau, all of that I, for example, was in one of the senator's offices from a very big ag state, and I mentioned that infertility is like we should be looking at the pesticides, and I was nearly kicked out of that office. I mean, they say, "You don't say that, pesticides aren't poison, you're wrong." So the fact that he even said that to many people might seem not that much, but it really was substantial. And so I was really happy he could get that in there.
Jenna, he starts the he put out that first statement, short statement. The eruption occurs. People are very upset. He comes out with a longer statement. As Brenda said, he starts with, I'm always going to tell you the truth. Did you, like, when you read that statement, and I understand, Kelly's point, that he's actually doing a lot by pointing out pesticides and saying they're toxic, given that he's, part of an administration that has, constituents who are farmers and people need food and we need affordable food. But, wasn't Bobby supposed to be different? Like, wasn't he supposed to be the change agent? Wasn't he supposed to, like he says, I'm always going to say the truth? Is this just the reality of governance? Like, is there part of you that's sad about that he's part of this now, that he's got to sort of be sort of the grown up in the room and say, we can't just change this overnight? Like, what did you go through your mind when you read that statement?
Everything that you said and more, 1,000%. It's so sad, but it's not, there's not a minute where you go, I don't see why this man doesn't just stand up to his boss, the president of the United States, and tell him he's wrong. Like, he wouldn't last very long, right? He just wouldn't. So again, my nickname on my Substack is Pollyanna. I am kittens and sunshine. I am going to find the silver lining, the bright spot. I mean, and I think it was Kelly that said it earlier, like, 1 month ago, yeah, maybe the MAHA moms, you're the glyphosate girl, maybe you know, your niche was talking about it, but the New York Times was not disparaging glyphosate, right? As soon as Trump says we need more of this, now you've got everybody talking about it. Bobby doesn't really even have to say anything. He didn't lie, right? He said truth and transparency. He has not once said glyphosate is great. I was wrong about that whole Monsanto thing. It's actually not that bad. He's not saying that. He's still, like Kelly said, tiptoeing out on the edge of what is going to be acceptable by saying it's terrible. Like, sometimes it's Sophie's choice. Sometimes you have to make a choice between two really bad options. You do. And like Zen, I don't know if you know about what happened in Sri Lanka. Like, they tried to go immediately organic, and their economy literally collapsed and their president fled in the middle of the night. People were starving there. It was like civil war. So I don't think, like, yeah. Again, I say this in my Substack all the time. Two things can be true at the same time, right? Two things can be true. Glyphosate is horrible, should not be in our food system. Our farmers need something better, and we need a path that supports them. You had Thomas Massey immediately slide in with the No Liability for Glyphosate Act that has bipartisan support. Nothing has bipartisan support. That's a win. I think that's a win.
Zen, I think to a lot of listeners, sometimes it seems as though MAHA is pit against conventional farmers. And there's this sort of narrative that what works for conventional farmers doesn't work for MAHA, and therefore the MAHA people are interested in organic stuff that is not scalable and whatever. And there's obviously the political lens through which to look at this, which is the midterms are coming up. The ag states tend to be red. You need them to sort of shore up their support for this president as they normally have. What do you say to people who view it that way?
Well, I would say that the narrative around how farming has to be is narrow-minded, because it's not looking at the historical picture of farming. Look at India, look at China. How did they get to be the most populous countries in the world? Almost 1 billion people. Up until 40 years ago, they were not using GMOs or glyphosate. This is a new phenomena. It is not something that we are actually dependent on. To say that we are dependent on glyphosate, to say that our economy is going to collapse without it, is not historically accurate. It is a choice. Now, is the farming right now in America set up where 80% of GMOs are engineered to withstand glyphosate? Yes. Is 85 to 95 to 100% of our commodity crops, GMOs? Yes. It's a massive part of our farming system. And yet, Organizations like Farmers Footprint and Kiss the Ground and Rodale Institute have transformed 30 million acres to regenerative ag, which hopefully is on the way to regenerative organic ag. There are farmers every day that are making the choice to stop using glyphosate cold turkey, and they don't collapse, right? Do they go through a transition period? Yes. Mark Dudla from Dudla Farms, one of our advisors, we have dozens of farmers that don't use a drop of glyphosate. Mark Dudla, he switched to going regenerate. He went to regenerative organic because his father got a flesh-eating cancer from using agrochemicals. And when they ordered the chemo, which they had to pay $1 million for, by the way, the name on the box was Bayer, the same name of the company that sold them the agrochemicals that gave him the cancer to begin with. And they spent $1 million to get 3 more years of life out of him, which was excruciating. He was in pain the entire time. So there are farmers that switch in a day. Right? They do it. It does happen. They are inspired to switch over. Now, expecting the entire industry to do that all at once, I understand that is, that's not likely. But if we don't say that we're going to do it, it's not going to happen if we don't make a commitment to it. So that's what needs to happen.
Let me play you a soundbite from Bobby Kennedy talking to Theo Vaughn a couple of days ago. You may have heard it, but I think it would be really interesting given what you just said and for us to have a little chat about it.
There's been a ton of lawsuits about this, right? Like about pesticides causing diseases and sickness in people, right? Or about this glyphosate, I think it's called.
Yeah, glyphosate.
There's been a ton of lawsuits, but they still don't have to take this product off of the shelf. So that's the craziest thing to me. Is that right?
Well, it's a problem because you have all the row croppers are dependent on it right now. And there's other technology that is emerging right now that actually, I looked at one yesterday. It's a tractor attachment that uses lasers to kill weeds. And that, if they can make that affordable, particularly for smaller farmers, that will be the answer because you'll be able to, they can kill bugs and they can kill weeds. But right now, if you banned glyphosate outright, it would put out of business 80% of our farmers.
Got it. Wow. So we're kind of dependent upon something that we know makes us sick.
Yeah, we are. And, we're doing a lot of work in the HHS to look for other alternatives and to find find an off-ramp because the farmers don't want to be using chemicals anyway. They're very expensive. They know, they have some of the highest cancer rates of any profession. And farmers care about their land. They want to leave it for their kids. It also destroys the microbiome in the soil, and that causes erosion. And so it's not a good long-term solution. The issue is how do you transition off of it without putting farmers out of business?
Right.
So, Kelly, let me ask you your thoughts on that. So you just heard Bobby Kennedy, talk about glyphosate, but also talk about how you can't just transition overnight because it would put too many farmers out of business.
Yeah, in fact, we've had discussions and he's met with some of the farmers from our advisory group to talk through what does this look like? What does a transition look like? And in fact, we've really tried hard to bring this message also to Brooke Rollins, who really holds the keys to deciding whether they're going to go whole hog into transforming this chemical system or if they are not going to or just be doing smaller investments into it. And I think I agree with what he said. I know that there are many farmers that are struggling. The suicide rate right now with farmers is 3.5 times the general population. That is a horrible number. And it is because farmers are struggling. Just yesterday, I heard from a farmer who has Parkinson's disease. His family all has allergies and autoimmunity, and they are trying to figure out where is the off ramp to this chemical system and why isn't it readily available to me? And why do I have to compete to get that money from the USDA to try and make that transition? So I think that the will is there among the farmers to start making that transition, but it's just not being invested in by this government. And something that concerns me about the talking about technological advancements, and I am friends with some of the people that are developing these incredible robotic systems that truly could be transformative and decrease pesticide use. But what I don't want to see is that now, instead of becoming dependent on chemicals, we become dependent on these very expensive systems that really, in the beginning, only large-scale farms are going to be able to afford. Because the truth of the matter is, if you go one step further and you decide you're going to invest in regenerative agriculture, you're not going to need either one. You're not going to need the technology and you're not going to need the pesticides, because the ecosystems will be restored, and that naturally suppresses a lot of the weeds that are problematic. So what I can imagine is a situation of going to the technology because maybe that is a solution that farmers can wrap their head around, to invest in this direct one-for-one replacement that is at least not toxic. But in truth, we need $5 to $10 billion kickoff investment in regenerative systems to get the farmers the education to be moving off of all of these types of inputs. And what's frustrating is it's doable. I think Bobby Kennedy certainly knows it's doable. Does Brooke Rollins know it is? I don't know. We're trying to get that education to her, but certainly there is an off ramp if we're willing to embrace it.
Zen, I think there was something you wrote, which sort of, we're talking about Brooke Rollins. We're talking about, let's talk a little about Lee Zeldin. You said if the glyphosate is sort of fitting inside, a pattern of things that are occurring. I can't remember your exact words, but you made the point that this isn't an isolated thing. Like just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen news out of the EPA. They struck down the endangerment finding. They rolled back the mercury limits on coal plants. I think to sort of the lay observer, this looks like an EPA that is very much on the side of industry and very much wants to deregulate and very much is prioritizing sort of the business aspect, perhaps over the health aspect. I just want to get your thoughts on sort of what's the direction that you're seeing all of this moving right now beyond just the glyphosate executive order.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. It doesn't just look like that. It's stated that way in the EPA's budget. If you look at it, it's like their manifesto for what they're going to do. If you had to sum it up, it would be business first. It is essentially clear away the regulations to clear pathway for businesses to be innovative. And they want to get rid of the regulations that, prevent somebody from grazing where there's a certain kind of frog or a turtle that might be endangered, where there's, water regulations. They want to roll back that. So they've rolled back asbestos, formaldehyde. They've approved 2 PFAS pesticides. There's more, waiting. Keep in mind, there's already 62 PFAS pesticides that have been approved by previous administrations. They want to roll back, through the Farm Bill, they want to push back any assessment of pesticides for 5 years to 2031. No assessment, no re-review process of pesticides. I mean, this is insanity, right?
And dicamba getting reapproved, right?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yep. Dicamba got reapproved. That was outrageous, right? There's no... what they said was that 100 farmers came to the Hill to say that they would go out of business. They're using the business thing, right? They're using business. They would go out of business if they didn't have dicamba. They would use more harmful pesticides, which, by the way, they're all toxic. They all kill. I don't care if it's called dicamba, 2,4-D, atrazine, glyphosate. They're all toxic. And I don't care if they're made in China or Germany or the USA. They all kill. So this system, which Kelly is touching upon, this whole system of farming is what needs to be transformed. And this is what I have set out since day one, 13 years ago, was to transform the food system and health in America and beyond. Transform is kind of like, I don't know if you've done any transformational work, but it's not like taking a bicycle and taking off the seat and putting a new bicycle seat on, right? That's change. Transforming would be taking that bicycle apart and making it into a rocket. Something completely different that functions in a completely different way. So that's what we need to do with this system. And it's going to get messy before we do that. There's going to be a lot of people that push back and resist, and it's going to be challenging, and there's going to need to be a huge investment into transforming the system. But Kelly's right that we can transform it. Regenerative organic farming is the pathway to go, and it doesn't utilize robots or lasers or pesticides. It is a non-toxic way to increase nutrient density in the crops and to provide food. One more thing I want to say about this: when we look at the farming system, let's look at it and actually forget that 80% of what American farmers are growing is exported to other countries. Only 20% of what is grown is feeding Americans. So when they say we're going to starve, they don't mean we Americans are going to starve if we don't grow this food. And keep in mind that a large percentage of it is grown for fuel. That doesn't mean starvation. It's grown for plastic. It's grown for toxic inflammatory seed oils, right? So let's really look at the truth of what we're growing here and how much of it is actually feeding Americans. And then let's stop importing so much of our food, which 40 to 70% of some of our crops, like fruit and soybeans, are imported that we eat. How about we start growing food for Americans on American soil that's non-toxic and nutrient dense? I don't think that's too much to ask considering our medical bills right now.
Let me put something out there, and it's kind of addressed to all of you, and we can figure out who wants to take it first. But so I'm going to get real for a second, which is, like Kelly said, I think it's clear that the MAHA movement is very grateful for the opportunity to get at the highest levels of government to try to affect change. But on some level, there's got to be a part of you that says, with this guy, like, you're partnering with a president that literally could not be more different in terms of where he stands on industry when it comes to food, environmental toxins. And the only place I've seen him being like, okay, Bobby, I'm a little with you on this, but even that it seems to be pulling back, is on vaccines. So my question is, on some level, I really appreciate the, like, we're in government and we're going to try to, do what we can. But on some level, are the obstacles so big that you have to sort of ask yourselves, we got to figure out who our better partners are in this? Who wants to take that first? Okay, Kelly.
So I'll take this. So I think that this movement, this non-toxic movement, sits very well with conservatives and the conservative constituency, because this is a very pro-family, pro-life group of people. So the fact that it's primarily been liberals and Democrats that have talked about non-toxic everything is, I think that is passé. Now it's bipartisan, if not even more going towards conservatives. I mean, this week alone, I've had several religious groups reaching out to me because they want to talk about this glyphosate situation. The disconnect between the constituents and Congress could not be greater. Congress needs to wake up to that. But this is the other thing with Trump. And this is why when Trump embraced MAHA, I have really felt, and still could be true, though it's not looking great now. I'm not silly, but it was going to take someone extreme and so unpredictable to completely transform the system and finally tell corporations, no, you know what? I told my friend Bobby here that we're not going to keep poisoning people, and because that's a logical thing. I'm pro people. And he would be someone that could push back. What I think that, and that's certainly something no administration has ever done. Trump has done that kind of thing. And so that, for me personally anyway, was a big hope that he would go against what the press is saying about this supposed nut, Bobby Kennedy, who we know is not a nut, but that's the way he was portrayed. Embrace him. That was bold, to go and embrace this movement that on all elements is pushing back against corporations. That was bold. So this sudden pivot actually is not one that I would have predicted, because I kind of felt like he had enough balls to actually take this on. And now it's proving maybe that that's not the case.
You thought Trump was unpredictable and extreme, that he could potentially be the guy who say, forget it, we're going to make a huge change. But you're saying this shows you he actually was predictable.
In a way, yes, predictable or corrupted. I think later on corrupted by these special interests,
which is predictable. It's predictable that our government would be corrupted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Zen, what do you think about that? Just to build off what Kelly was saying, that on one level, maybe it does require a massive disruption to get the kind of change we want going. But is a part of you that's like, is there any part of you that's like, man, like this particular alliance can only go so far?
Well, this is disruptive, right? It's upsetting, it's disappointing. But I always hold out hope, because I know that Trump has friends with children with autism, and he made a personal promise to them that he would find out the reason why. And I think that he simply doesn't know yet, or his advisors around him are shielding him of the information that glyphosate is linked to autism. Glyphosate has been found in childhood vaccines. Our organization found it, and another lab found glyphosate in vaccines. Glyphosate is a chelator, and it grabs onto that aluminum that's in vaccines and in our environment and brings that aluminum up into the brain. And many scientists are saying is one of the major contributing factors of autism. So I think that if his advisors around him knew this, I think if he was making decisions based, on health, he would make different decisions. And what I would like to see is better advisors around him that are willing to have the courage to bring him the information that would empower him to make better choices. Because right now, I know he has a personal commitment to make America healthy again and to end this autism epidemic. And I think he's simply not equipped with the information to do that, or he's being corrupted, as Kelly says. And that's extremely unfortunate. But we're going to keep going no matter what he does, and we're going to continue to reach out, and we're not going to stop asking them to be accountable, right? We're not going to stop doing that. Our government needs to be accountable for what they're doing, and we're going to keep asking for them to be responsible for that.
Jen, I want to come to you, and Zen made points there that I'm sure some of our scientist listeners would dispute, but we stipulate that you guys believe that glyphosate is the cause of these things. So that's not the subject here. But Jenna, just to you, your readers, sort of rank and file MAHA supporters, do you get the sense that they see this moment perhaps the way that you guys are laying out, the kind of limitations of power, working, there's politicians have multiple constituencies they have to please? Or are they fed up? I mean, where are your readers in the evolution of sort of processing these changes at EPA and especially the glyphosate order?
Sure. I will start by saying I don't necessarily think my readers are a representative sampling necessarily of all MAHA. They're very, very MAHA. But you can't follow me and be like a super cynic, like this administration is conspiring against us and we're screwed, because I am Pollyanna. I'm always going to find a silver, even when I'm pissed, I'm going to find a silver lining. Like what Zen was saying, I actually do not believe for 1 second, not for 1 second, that anybody in our administration is actively being shielded from important information. I could be wrong. Like I said, I think everybody knows everything. I think everybody knows how bad glyphosate is. I kind of look at it like there's a good cop, bad cop situation going on in the White House, right? You've got somebody that's trying to appeal to the MAHA moms, and you've got somebody that's trying to appeal to big ag and big business. And, everybody can kind of point to the other guy like, it's not me. Like Trump's doing the glyphosate thing. And then Trump's like, well, Bobby Kennedy's making me, get rid of the immunity. I think in a weird way, that's a measure of effectiveness. That's one way you can be effective in a world that is so divided and so split on so many of these things, right? Like, I mean, no, we all want healthy food. We all believe, I'm sure, if people knew about it and understood it, regenerative ag is the way to go, right? But you have these big farmers that may not be able to, transition very quickly. You've got big, huge industries that would go out of business. So if Trump were immediately to say, sorry, Bear, we're going to do this other thing and you're out, there would be an uproar on that side too. So I think it's a lot more coordinated. I think I wrote a piece that went quasi viral, that it was like a letter to Bobby. This was earlier in his administration. It was like, look, buddy, like we know what you know. And we know that you know it. We know you know how bad these vaccines are. We know everything you know because you haven't been shy about it. You've been saying it for decades. Like, we believe in you. Like, we're not going to abandon you. But like, could you do it a little bit faster? But I really do think he's in, the proverbial rock in a hard place. So, I mean, I kind of look at it like that. Like one person can't always be the bad guy. One person can't always be, this is all the change is going to happen at one time. I think it's kind of synergistic and you need a good and a bad sometimes.
I want to end on just one thought, which is a forward-looking thought. Kelly, I want to go to you first. What now? I mean, how are you all reorganizing in this moment?
As I said earlier, we are going nowhere. We are just growing in numbers. We are going to collect. We are going to keep on organizing year after year after year. We are going absolutely nowhere. I think Democrats and Republicans should be standing up right now, fighting for us, because we are going to be an enormous voting bloc. And this just pissed us off. More people are going to come into the crowd now to be fighting this egregiousness and the continuing poisoning of our population. So, I feel frustrated right now by this, disappointed. Yes, it's specifically given this is a specific issue that I've worked on for, now close to 10 years. But I'm, the way that we are in this grassroots movement, it just makes us stronger. We're going to keep on kicking back. And I'm so grateful for partners like Jenna and Zen. And there's so many of us, there are millions of us, and we're ready to go.
Zen, you guys have made the point that you're not going anywhere, which I think a lot of MAHA listeners right now would probably hanging on to. But I guess it begs the question then, where are you going? How do you pivot off this?
Yeah, well, we keep going in the sense of, number one, we just tested military food, 40 samples, found, glyphosate in 95% of them, 100% contained pesticides. 100% of those pesticides, by the way, are made in China. And 100% positive for heavy metals, veterinary drugs and hormones that are banned, not approved for human use. Our military food is toxic, and some people might say that there's chemical warfare going on when you've got foreign companies selling us, $15 to $20 billion worth of pesticides every year, and that ends up in our military food, and which is detrimental to their health and their performance, right? So that needs to change. And what we're doing is appealing to this administration. For less than 2% of the military budget, they could support the transitioning to regenerative organic farming and procure food for the entire military and for our students to be from America, American-grown food for American troops and American soldiers and American students. That is our cry for action right now. And we are doing additional testing as soon as we get more funding for it. There's a lot more things that we want to test that impact the health of over 350 million Americans. And frankly, we're doing a better job than the FDA because we test and we release the information. We release the brands and we release all the data. And we think that should be priority number one for people out there if they want more information and they want to see a change and movement in this, in this growing, or if they want to see progress in this movement, it's to support us in exposing the truth and then compelling action around that. And this administration has responded. They have 20 military bases that are rolling out real food programs, major changes in their food programs in the next 2 months. And they've responded in many other ways. So that's what we're looking at going forward, is continuing to expose the truth, educate not just the public, but our elected officials. We've started a legislative nonprofit arm, like a sister organization called the Moms Across America Movement. And the tagline is, "Yes, ma'am." We're championing policy and public servants who put children, health, safety, and America's future first. And so that legislative arm, sister organization, we hope will be supportive of getting MAHA candidates into the midterm elections and supporting candidates who will put health and safety first. And frankly, right now, we're championing both sides, right? It doesn't matter. Shelley Pingree has been fantastic in working on
a Democrat,
the pesticide immunity thing. And, there's a lot of progress with working with people from both sides of the aisle.
MAHA candidates, not Republican candidates.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Well, so let me ask you on that, both Zen and Jenna, what is your message to people running for office this November?
Quit being full of it, well, again, back to my earlier, promises are always empty because you don't always have the power, right? It's like if I said to my kids, hurry up and get in the car, we'll go to Disney on the way home. Disney's not on the way home. It's not even in my state. I should never have made that promise, but I got the kids in the car, right? I would say let's come to the middle. Let's bring people together. Let's actually campaign on what you can do, not how at least you're not the other guy. Can we do that? Can we actually have some platforms and some messaging and something to back it up? Like Bobby Kennedy had the receipts, right? He could back up everything he said. I still believe in him. I still believe in him. I feel like his reputation is way bigger than this minute that we are in time. I'm giving him time. Everybody else, be Bobby.
Final words, Zen.
Absolutely. I love the be Bobby, phrase. Bobby's leadership is that of compassion and collaboration. He has fostered a sense of collaboration that no other political leader has. And hats off to Trump for also fostering that as well. In the MAHA commission, he pulled together every single administrator and said, he was like daddy, he was saying, be nice and work together. And so that trickle down effect in our movement has been fantastic. I am collaborating with people that, a couple years ago, we didn't like each other. Right. And we are working together side by side now. There are a lot of people in this MAHA movement that have now come together since the executive order. They're like, we need to make a PAC. We need to raise more money. They are working harder now than ever before. And I really would advise any elected official that wants to get reelected to start making health the priority in your platform, because that speaks to everybody and brings people in that may not have, ever even voted before, which is exactly what happened with Kenny. There were people that never voted before. They didn't want to vote, and they voted for Kennedy when he was running for president, in that sense. So now is the time to prioritize health. And that's what I would say to every single elected official. And if you take action, if you put forth bills and you take action and you put your word on it, you're going to see support from people from both aisles. I think that would be the smartest thing to do right now.
Zen Honeycutt, Jenna McCarthy, Kelly Ryerson, thank you so much for joining us on Why Should I Trust You?
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And that was our show. I'm Brenda Adhikari. He's Tom Johnson. Please send us questions and comments at questions@whyshoulditrustyou.net. As we said earlier in the show, our episode is going to be dropping a little bit later on Thursday, the Thursday episode. We will see you right back here next week.